And this morning we have our expert Kent, who will be discussing Maria Mozart's campaign for us a little bit.
That's right. I am the world-renowned expert on Maria Mozart, in the entire world and the universe. So,
Well, it's good to have you then.
yeah. Maria Mozart is an interesting female musician. She was born on July 30th, 1751, which is an interesting time for women. You probably know her name, at least because she's the older sister of Wolfgang Mozart, who is an extremely famous musician and composer. In their youth, she's 5 years older than her brothers, and they were both considered musical geniuses, they were shown around by their father Leopold in Europe, such as Paris, Berlin, Rome, and all these big cities that have great musical backgrounds, and so that obviously exposed them to a lot, and got their passions hyped up about music. And as a child, she played the harpsichord, which was the eventual, or the precursor to the eventual piano. And then she learned how to play the piano, which is what Mozart was also famous for. And so they eventually, of course, as the natural cycle goes, they both started writing their own music. I think Maria was definitely a little more prevalent because she was older, and so she had a little more experience, and so she was more talented. But because of her gender, she was unable to get her work in a spot that could be seen and recognized, and so obviously the one conduit she can use is her brother, who is also on tours, and so there's an interesting story. He plays for a crowd of people. One of Maria's songs and one of her pieces, and they ask, "Oh, how did you come up with that?" And he actually says, "It was actually my sister who wrote it." And so obviously that does not go over well. People don't want to hear that it's a good piece of work is written by a woman, and so their father Leopold is outraged and just totally stops her from supporting her composition and her music career. It's not going to happen anymore, according to him. So, Wolfgang is shown around Europe continuously as they grow a little older, and she has to stay home and support his Italian tour by giving little piano lessons. So obviously that kind of shows some of her disparity between her and her brother, and this kind of created a drift between her and her sibling, which is really sad, because they were both so talented and really close and could have been an awesome team together. And they eventually stopped communicating at all in 1788. So she was 37, and so that's just really sad, losing all touch with your brother, who actually admired and she was his idol when they were children. So that's just really kind of a sad thing, just because of gender. And it kind of comes full circle. After he dies, Maria kind of let bygones be bygones and tried to spread his work and music and composition as much as she could, which really kind of increased his fame and his family's wealth. And that says a lot about her and what she was trying to do. And it's kind of sad also because none of her compositions have survived, even though she was well known for her talent, and some would say that they were probably better than Wolfgang's. There are actually letters between Wolfgang and Maria where Wolfgang praises her work and says, "Wow, you are awesome, and these are really good works." And so it is kind of disappointing that none of them have survived. She had, and going back to kind of her life and what she was about, she had 3 children, and she named the oldest one after her father Leopold. And it's a strange situation because Leopold, the oldest son, was raised completely by her father, and she kind of went to another town and was not really involved in his younger life. And this kind of emphasizes, at least to me, her total submission to her father and to her gender because he wanted another son that could play music and could be part of the world of music. And I think that says a lot about the situation and kind of the tragedy that was her life and her composition. And it's kind of a sad story. And she eventually died on October 29th, 1829 in Salzburg, Austria. Blind and, I mean, relatively wealthy because of her family name, but, with no work, like none of her work surviving, and no really, not a lot of fame about composition, which was probably her main talent in life.
Wow. Well, Ken, thank you for taking some time out for our viewers. It's really interesting to hear. Maria's work often gets overshadowed by her younger brother. For today's interview, we have our expert on Fanny Mendelssohn.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on the interview today. Appreciate it.
It's great having you here.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I know a little bit about Fanny. Well, to begin a little bit, she was born on November 14th, 1805. So considerably a little older than everyone else around here, if you know what I mean.
Certainly.
Yeah, she was actually a German pianist, and when she was very young, she began her piano lessons with lessons from her mother. A lot of the history goes about talking about her father a lot, but it was really her mother who got it started. And as a child, she also had an equally, if not actually a little bit less... What?
Damn it. I'm sorry. Just keep going.
It's okay, I'll cut this out. She actually had an equally talented, and if not less talented, younger brother named Felix Mendelssohn, who also played the piano, if I hadn't already given that away. Yeah, both grew up playing piano under their parents, but their father was a little bit tougher on the children than their mother was, and this kind of went down to show Fanny's struggles in the beginning. His name was Abraham Mendelssohn, and he advised Fanny that music was kind of purely a hobby, and that she should really focus on being a housewife instead of learning music, because women in that time obviously really couldn't get their name out there like they wanted to. But that didn't really stop Fanny growing up. Through her brother, who, like I said, was considered less talented, Fanny was a little bit more talented. She was actually able to get her music out there through him. When she was 13 years old, she could play all 24 preludes from the Well-Tempered Clause by heart. She knew it by heart. And this was all composed by a man named... Hold on, I'm gonna cut this out, but let me see that. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Johann Sebastian Bach. Okay.
Is this about like
Johann Sebastian Bach?
Johann Sebastian Bach.
Is this the height?
Johann.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it still rolling?
Mhm.
Okay. At the age of 13, she could play all 24 preludes from the Well-Tempered Clause by heart. She knew it. With her eyes closed, and this was all composed by Johann Sebastian Bach. Her brother Felix would assist her, like I said before, by publishing her music through his name. Felix had several musical collections and published 3 different pieces for her in his 8th and 9th collection of music. This even actually helped Felix, because there was a lot of people who would give him constructive criticism, and under Fanny's different pieces on his collections, well, today we would consider them albums, he got a lot of constructive criticism, was able to help his own musical game grow. So indirectly, Fanny assisted him in his musical career the same way that he was assisting her. Eventually, she married a man named Wilhelm Hensel and had her only child with him. He was also very, very supportive of her music as she was having the struggles of getting her name out there, being a woman composer back then. So he would be by her side day by day, playing or listening to her play, supporting her in every way. Never, if she ever took any punches, he was right there with her. And she kind of went out with a bang. About a year before she died, she had her #1 public performance, and she actually died about a year later playing her brother's kind of #1 hit at the time. She was practicing for that, but her #1 public performance was out rehearsing another one of her brother's pieces, and she really kind of became known for that. It's just unfortunate that it happened only a year before she died. When she died in 1847, it was kind of due to an unexpected stroke that, like I said, happened while she was practicing. And but because of her assistance from her brother, and I think another big thing was how hard her father was on her growing up. Kind of gave her a lot of self-motivation to get her music out there, not just through her brother, but with the help of Felix and the support of her husband, she was able to get all of her stuff out there. And today, she's actually one of the most well-documented women artists back then in the day. And she even has many CDs and records, and was overall quite successful despite all the struggles back then.
Wow, well, that's certainly very interesting. From start to finish, seems like she had a lot of dynamic forces influencing her.
She did.
And culminating in one of her best pieces around 1847.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me today.
Absolutely.
And here to look at some opposing viewpoints to Fanny Mendelssohn and Maria Mozart, we have Man Kent, who is an expert on another female composer named Clara Schumann.
Yeah, I do know quite a bit about Clara Schumann. I'm actually the forefront leader in the entire universe on Clara Schumann. So I just wanted to get started by, saying how different of a case she was than these two other women, Maria Mozart and Fanny. She was born a little later, September 13th, 1819, and is, still recognized as one of the most distinguished pianists of the Romantic era. And so, we're going to kind of look at her case as, how it was similar, how it was different. Obviously, she was a woman. She was a composer, just like the other two, but her situation kind of manifested itself differently. She married relatively young, I think at around age 18, to Robert Schumann in 1840, who was also a big musician. And this allowed her to kind of meet other musicians and network in a way to get her name out there and find these other people that she can connect to and learn from and have a group of friends that she can compose with. And this is where things kind of take a turn for Clara. Robert attempted suicide in 1814, just 14 years into their marriage. And so he was committed to an asylum for the rest of his life, which was only 2 years later when he died. And so this, you'd think that she would become a sad widow with nothing left to do. She'd probably move in with her family, but no, she began traveling and doing concerts and composing to support him and to support her family, and that's really, that says a lot about her. And she had a friend named Joseph Joachim who allowed her to do these things, to travel and to meet people and actually compose and get her name out there by herself, because people knew her because of her husband. And so, she can say, yeah, this is my husband. He's a famous musician, but here's my work too. And that really worked for her. And that's an interesting comparison to the other two who were not able to get their names out there without the help of their brother, using their brother's name, or just later down the line. Unfortunately, most of their compositions were already gone. And so she was able to compose a good body of successful work with, several strong piano concertos. And it's funny because in her early years, she said, "Composing gives me great pleasure. There is nothing that surpasses the joy of creation, if only because through it one wins hours of self-forgetfulness when one lives in a world of sound." And I think that says a lot about her and her youth and her passion for this. And obviously her husband attempted suicide, or he died in the asylum. Not the best circumstances, and so maybe her passion kind of died, and she stopped composing work later in her life, which is really sad. I mean, obviously she, I think when she was 36 was when she last composed work, but throughout all that, she still has quite a number, at least 20 of very successful compositions. So later in her life, this is also a sad quote. "I once believed that I possessed creative talent, but I've given up on this idea. A woman must not desire to compose. There has never yet been one able to do it. Should I expect to be the one?" And this kind of says, after a lifetime of attempting to compose work, even though she was successful at it, the stigmas of the era on women composing were just too much. And so maybe for her time it was too much, but I still think she was absolutely extremely successful in composition, and everyone in the orchestral world knows Clara Schumann and her success, and I think that says a lot about her.
Well, thank you very much, man. It was interesting to see the opposite viewpoint as opposed to the other two. Quite impressive that she was able to overcome those obstacles, although being a woman back in that time.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you very much for being on today.
Yeah.
All right. Hope you have a good day.